Once upon a time, in a kingdom called Ohafia, there lived a king whose name was Arinze, who was a very wealthy and powerful king. King Arinze was loved and respected throughout his kingdom and other neighboring kingdoms. In spite of all he had acquired, he was a very unhappy king. He had 3 beautiful wives, Queen Ugochi the first, Queen Uloma the second, and Queen Ego the last, but none of them could give him an heir. In the kingdom of Ohafia, only female children were considered as heirs. The king had 7 sons, but no daughter. This made him very sad and unhappy. One day, the king embarked on a journey in company of 3 of his sons and his guards. He had heard of a famous wizard who could solve his problems. They journeyed for 3 days and nights before getting to the wizard's cave. When they arrived, the last of the king's son, Ebube, spat out in disgust at the stench coming out from the cave. His father, the king, quickly cautioned and asked him to behave himself, then commanded him to apologize to the wizard. The young prince then told the wizard he was sorry, but the wizard ignored him. Before the king could tell the wizard why he traveled from far away to his cave, the wizard already knew. He told the king to listen attentively to his instructions and follow them accordingly. The wizard gave the king some instructions and a white substance. The king thanked him and bade him farewell. On arrival, Queen Ego dragged her son Ebube into a room and asked for the outcome of the journey. Ebube opened his mouth wide open and told his mother everything the wizard told the king. The wizard had told the king to marry a virgin bride. On the day he would sleep with her, he should apply the white substance on his manhood before sleeping with her. He also gave him a seed to plant on the day she conceives. The seed would germinate after 7 days, which would be used to prepare a concoction for her to eat. Upon hearing all of this from her son, Queen Ego was green with envy. She was very upset that she kicked her son out of her room. How could the king betray her this way? She wanted to remain the king's last wife. If she cannot give the king an heir, then no other woman would. And so she started scheming on ways she can spoil the king's plans. The king called his first wife, Queen Ugochi, into his chamber and told her all that the wizard told him. She was delighted at the news and was happy that finally the king would have an heir to his throne. He handed over the seed to her and instructed her on what to do. Soon, the town crier passed an information across the kingdom from the king for a virgin bride. The whole kingdom was in pandemonium. Fathers could be seen beating the hell out of their daughters in anger because they were no longer virgins, and he had made them lose the opportunity of becoming in-laws to the king. Maidens who were virgins could be seen preparing themselves for the contest. Among these maidens was Binyelum. She was the most beautiful maiden in the kingdom, and every other maiden were envious of her. Binye was from a poor family, but they were kind and loving. She was a very respectful and humble girl who did not allow her beauty get into her head. She was the only daughter of her family, and they were so proud of her. They couldn't afford to get her new wrappers and beads for the contest, so her father sold his only piece of land and got her all she needed in preparation for the contest. The day of the contest finally came. Out of all the maidens in the kingdom, only 10 were selected to move to the next stage. The 10 maidens were kept in one of the rooms in the palace to spend the night in preparation for the next day. Unknown to the palace, Queen Ego had hired 5 strong men from another kingdom to carry out an evil plan. She secretly put a substance in their evening meal that would make them fall asleep. Thereafter, the men she hired would go in and rape them all. If there is no virgin, there would be no bride for the king, she thought, and laughed hysterically. However, the 9 virgins all hated Binye because she was the most beautiful of them all. They thought they didn't stand a chance against her, and so they treated her badly. She wasn't allowed to eat of the food they were served because they wanted her to look starved and unappealing to the king. Thereafter, they forced her to sleep inside the toilet. After eating, they all fell asleep, and the men carried out their evil plan on them. They woke up the next morning, unaware of what had happened to them. Soon, it was time to be presented before the royal council. The first maiden went in and seated were the king, his wives, his sons, some elders, and the chief priest. As soon as she entered, the chief priest danced around her and placed a white staff on her forehead. It immediately turned red, and everyone screamed in shock and disbelief. She fell to her knees and pleaded with them that she was untouched. She was confused. Her parents bowed their head in shame and dragged her away. Queen Ego smiled to herself that her evil plans had worked. This went on till the 9th maiden, and the king was already giving up. Then it was Binyelo's turn. When the staff was placed on her head, it remained white, and the king immediately rushed at her and hugged her. He was very excited that at last he had found for himself a virgin bride who would bear him an heir. Queen Ego was outraged and went straight to the men she had hired to give her back her money, since they failed to do their jobs well, and they threatened to expose her, and so she let them be. Binye's family were delighted and moved into the palace immediately. The marriage was the talk of the kingdom. Kings and queens of other kingdoms were also invited to the ceremony. Everyone had enough to eat and drink. The king did as was instructed and went in to his new bride. After 7 days, she conceived. As instructed, Queen Ugochi planted the seed and waited for it to germinate. Unknown to her, Queen Ego had visited a witch doctor who gave her another seed. She was to plant it with the other seed. When no one was watching, she quickly dug the seed Queen Ugochi planted and placed her wicked seed side by side and covered it up. After 7 days, the seed germinated. Queen Ugochi was in charge of taking care of the new queen, so every day she cut the leaves and used it to prepare concussion for Queen Binye to eat. On the day of labor, after long hours in the labor room, finally, the cry of a baby could be heard. However, Binye lost her life. She gave up the ghost. The midwife took the news to the king, and he was sad. However, when he asked about the child, the midwife shook her head in shame and told the king he had an heir. He and his council members took to dancing and praising the gods. But the look on the midwife's face cut it short. When asked what the matter was, she shook her head in disgust and told the king she was an abomination. The king's heir, an imbecile.